This one's rather lengthy also. It was stated that the new 1 cent property tax rate increase was necessary to account for inflation and to attract and retain talented employees. The 1 cent would generate roughly $344,000 in tax revenue. In the September board meeting, the commissioners approved $290,000 of taxpayer money to cover an unbudgeted expense of a Jinks Creek dredging study. Even though the engineer stated that he felt the project would be approved, how would you recoup this sudden $290,000 budget shortfall if this project does not happen? Mark, I believe you're next.
Well, I know reevaluation had an impact on a lot of things that a lot of people have mentioned to me. But as far as recouping $290,000+ on a study for the dredging of Jinks Creek, if it doesn't happen, my understanding was that there were a number of residents in and around the most affected area that were more than willing to fund that. Now, if I'm misinformed, I'm willing to hear the real truth. But if that is not the case, I need to hear from whoever can enlighten me on that. Again, I know what the reevaluation did to my house and my home, and I think we're very fortunate that we have what we have with a 1 cent revenue neutral, basically revenue neutral situation. So I'm not sure that in the face of private money or residents funding that bill, that we'd be able to get anything back on it. So if anybody's got any more information on exactly that situation, I'd be welcoming it to help me understand it better. But that's what I understand as of right now.
So Mark alludes to the group that wants to have Jinks Creek dredged. In the meeting yesterday, or actually in the meeting a month ago, the gentleman who was speaking for that group at one point in questioning, actually under Tom Aiken, did indicate that they would go ahead and pay for the $290,000 if they had to. It was at that point, in my opinion, the meeting should have stopped, and we should have said, great. Go ahead and pay the $290,000 if you're willing to do it, and there's no reason for the town to risk any money whatsoever. For some reason that did not happen, and the vote proceeded, and the $290,000 was allocated. I spoke to the gentleman who made that proposal a couple of weeks later, and I confirmed with him that he did indeed say yes, that they would have paid for it. He said it very grudgingly, as he said, 75%, which is what grants are expected or whatever, to pick up the vast majority of the dredging. 75% is great, especially if you only have to pay 25, but he was basically, if you got to pay the whole thing, okay, we'll pay the whole thing. So why that decision was made in the first place, I leave it to you to decide. If we are looking for money, if it all falls through, then there are areas we would not want to cut. For example, we would not want to cut fire or public safety or beach renourishment. We would have to look in other areas of the general fund to pull that money back out of, and any projects that had been designated, such as things like the $290,000 or floodgates for canals that we spent some money on. Those would be the first projects that I would look to eliminate or at least postpone until the next year to make up for a shortfall that, sorry to be blunt about it, but we never should be in this position.
I like Mark and Mike here. I attended that meeting where the $290,000 was voted on, and I was under the impression that the person representing the property owners that wanted the Jinks Creek dredging was willing to go back to the group of property owners, and he felt like they would agree to pay for that or repay the town. And then I think it kind of got all confusing, and they ended up voting without putting that stipulation on it. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's the way I understood it. So I don't know at this time if the town can go back to those property owners and ask them if they can repay it back, if it doesn't work out. I do believe that if it was decided that, or was said that if it did work out, that the study was in favor of dredging it, that it would go towards the actual full payment for the dredging, that whole grant or whole process. And that they would be assessed, I believe, the property owners would be paying for that, as well as, I believe, a grant from the state or federal or something to that effect. But yes, so I was kind of confused on that myself, so that's about all we can do is just try to do things like that.
There is a well-organized and large number of people behind this request to dredge Jinks Creek. They've done a lot of homework. They've got a lot of people that they've surveyed that said, yes, I would be willing to go forward. Now, this has happened before. In my first year as a commissioner, dredging Jinks Creek came up, and it was voted down by the people that are funding this. So the $290,000, Wendy is exactly correct. If this project goes forward, and I think there's a good chance that it will, and it's not a bad risk to take, it's going to be folded into the entire bill, meaning the people that are on that list of property owners that are affected by Jinks Creek are the ones that are going to pay for it. We'll set up a town account, much like we have on the people that live on the concrete canals, to help them fund the maintenance of it, going forward. So it's a scenario that's going to end up, hopefully, very much like the 17 canals that we have now, funded by the taxpayers' dollars every time you pay your personal property tax.
I guess in my mind, it comes down to this decision wasn't made in a vacuum. I mean, somebody, like David said, they did a study. Were they 10% sure it could go through? Are they 90% they could dredge the canal? Okay. I have to think that our leadership would act responsibly with this amount of money and would not risk it if there was not a high chance of success for this. I, for one, think that it's a risk worth taking because I think it's been well researched. And it will help those homeowners. It will increase their property values and things like that. So I'm all for it. And I just have to think the town and our local leaders have thought this through. So that's the way I feel about it.
I'm not sure I totally understand the question. The money has been appropriated for, what is it, $290,000 you're saying? And if it doesn't go through, where are you going to find the money? Is that what the question is? I think so. Yeah. Well, if it doesn't go through, why do you need the money?
It's money that's been spent already toward the studies and engineering.
That's why I didn't understand it. I didn't understand that. Okay. Well, it's just like the canals that we have. If we need additional dredging, the property owners that are on those canals have to come up with the money to pay for it. And I think that's the way it should be done. If you've already spent the money, if it doesn't go through, then somebody's gonna have to pay for it. And I think it should be the property owners.